So, welcome everyone to season 2, episode 2 of Too Young for This, Too Old for That. We've got something different for you today. We are absolutely delighted to welcome our first ever guest to the show, Denise Nurse. Morning, Denise. Hi, Denise.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. Nice to see you both.
Now, you might recognise Denise as the face of Escape to the Country or BBC Morning Live. But what you might not know is that she started her career as a corporate lawyer, built and sold her own business, and is an amazing coach, speaker, presenter, and shows up for everybody in the world of presenting, TV, and entrepreneurship. But even more importantly, for this podcast, we see Denise as one of the founding figures because she was the one who told me about the presenting course that Annie and I did back in August last year. And so she was the spur that got me there. And that's how I met Annie. And then the rest, as they say, is history. So in some ways, she's our fairy godmother. Denise, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. What a lovely, lovely introduction. I truly appreciate that. That presenting course that you did really is a life changer. I have to give a big shout out to the Positive team. It's a great course. It's the very same course I did before my life segued from law into TV. And some of the connections I made on that course are still very close friends. So
Well, and welcome to Too Young for This, Too Old for That. I'm Annie, and this is a podcast where we explore intergenerational friendships, relationships in work and life.
And I'm Anji, and we have been going for 6 months now, and we're delighted to have you with us.
So before we start, Denise, as Angie did a wonderful intro explaining, you've had a really varied career from law to presenting to, now being on the podcast with us, of course. Oh my goodness. But could you tell us a little bit about your journey and what's got you to here today?
sure. Well, where I am today, I guess, is where I'll start because that's quite a varied career. Today, I describe myself as a founder and creator. I like to build things. I like to create things, businesses, communities, events. And particularly now, I'm focused on supporting ambitious women like yourselves, kind of taking themselves to the next level. I am convinced that the future of our world and our planet lies with more women being at the garden gate, being empowered. So everything we do towards that, I think, is what will save our planet and give us a really bright future. So that's what I do now. But the founder part goes back to being a child. I distinctly remember my first business being in summer club when everyone else is like playing, I don't know, netball or rounders, and I'm crocheting bracelets and selling them for $1 each because they were really pretty and then people really wanted them. And I was like, okay, fine, whatever it was, it's sweet money. And then I got to secondary school and I met my first best friend and we started the Secret Club. And that was my first membership model. And so you could join the Secret Club and we created a little storybook. It was my first serialization. So it was like a soap opera. We would write like a few pages of our story and then we would sell that chapter. We'd be like, come read the chapter. You can 10 pence, you can read this chapter and then come back tomorrow for the next installment. Then we're like, we better write something now. So somewhere in me, there's been this creative gene and desire to know what it's like to offer that service and make money with it and create your own way in the world. But when I got to real life, that translated into law. And I also had a deep sense of wanting to do something that was empowering for people in a different way. And law gave that opportunity. So I became a lawyer and I thought I didn't know what kind of, I actually thought I'd be a family lawyer for a long while. But what I found was commercial law and business kept calling again, helping people figure out what they want and get a win-win-win situation where all sides win is actually what I love. And that's what commercial law gave me. It was a way of like making sure no one has to be winning at the expense of someone else. Like, how do we do this so we all come out with what we need and want? And in the middle, with commercial deals, you're actually creating something new which should benefit everyone else. So that's how I got into law. TV was partly because of the positive course. I did that for some fun, but I entered a competition when I worked for a TV company called Sky. That was 20 years ago, and that gave me space for expression, which is something else I love to do. And so since then, I think that moment opened my eyes. Law can be very single track, very focused. It's great, but you can find yourself on the treadmill very quickly of, I've got the law firm, I'm going to be a partner. You know, this will be my life forever. And I just worked my way to the top. And that moment when I won a competition was like, you know, when a door opens and you see a whole another path for your life that you never imagined, and the brain just explodes. That's what happened to me. I thought, wow, there's more than one choice, and I can do what the hell I like. So here I am, doing what the hell I like, talking to wonderful women like you, and mixing it all up. My life today as a founder creator is law, it's business, it's conversation, it's empowerment. That's what I do.
I love that.
We absolutely love that. And it takes us right back to one of our very first episodes where we talked about that from a career point of view, you know, that conveyor belt that sometimes you stand on and it just takes you from one stage to the next stage, versus passion and pursuing sort of passion projects or passion in your work. And, you know, one of the things you say on your website, Denise, is you're having it all and you're not going to feel guilty about that. That's what I absolutely love. That's what I'm working towards. But, you know, this idea that we can change through our career, that we can explore all these different facets of ourselves can be really, really, you know, it's empowering to hear the story, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's so important. I think for women in particular, but for lots of us, society gives us a label, men too, a label and an idea. And especially once we go through our education system, you know, it sets you on a path and it does give you tools, but it can be quite restrictive. It can get you thinking there's only one way to be, no matter which career you choose. So the more of us can know that actually we have choice, and that those parts of us that we love and express that come to us really naturally are actually treasures. They're like the best bits of us. And I think sometimes we get into a trap where we think, oh, that's the bit I need to suppress. And what I really need to do is work at the bit I'm not very good at. And I must become skilled in being brilliant at, I don't know, it's like me trying to be brilliant at mechanics. It's just not going to happen. But you spend years of your life trying to do something else. And the joy of going, oh no, I can just be brilliant at being me and then find ways to do that is joy.
I think that's a message that I really hope that like anyone in their 20s who's, I mean, I like, you know, I'm 24 and a lot of my friends are kind of at those crossroads. Some people are really set in what they want to do. Other people are a bit like, oh, I'm good at a lot of different things. So what do I lock into? And I saw that you did an interview, was it with University of Liverpool, right? And and I really shot up when you said that you had the opportunity to go to a really academic school, or was it a stage school? You had that kind of those two paths. And then you're a bit like, well, why can't I do a little bit of both? Why can't I be a lawyer who also presents on TV and also love dance? And I just think that's something I really resonated with as someone who's an actor, but also does teaching. And I sometimes wrestle with that, I don't know, slight oxymoron of it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and that's totally understandable. But I think for me, I think looking at the younger generation now, so, you know, 20s, my stepdaughter is 27, my stepson is 25, so I'm very close to like watching what they're going through. I think there is so much more choice, which in a way is liberating and confusing at the same time. But okay, great, Denise, you can do everything. But now what do? I still need to choose something. I still need a job. And if I have a career, I need to be focused in it. So some choice brings responsibility as well, and it can feel quite pressuring. I
Yeah.
totally understand that. But I think when we can imagine our life as like chapters,
Yeah.
then it opens the door to that. Well, in this chapter or in this season, I'm doing this, and it's okay. By the time I get to 50, which is nearly why I am, who knows?
Yeah. No, I love that. I think it's really liberating. We literally spoke on another episode that it can sometimes feel like as women, you're kind of, this is your category now. This is what you're doing. This is your arc for your life and this is your story. Whereas I think the idea that we've got dexterity and we can have chapters and that chapter can close and we move on to the next is really liberating. I was going to ask you, when you were in your 20s, what did you imagine, I suppose, success looked like when you were sat at 24? What were you like, oh yeah, this will be successful, or this is what I'll look like when I'm successful?
Yeah. At that point, at 24, I was a newly qualified lawyer. So on the one hand, I had reached that moment of success after 6 years of training, my degree and my law course and getting a training contract and finally qualifying. It was like, wow, I've done that thing. So that was a moment of success. And then I don't know about you guys, but I'm pretty sure it's the same for most. You hit a level of success and you immediately go, oh, now what? And everything you just built in like suddenly meaningless. You're like, okay, now I need to do the next thing. So at 24, success looked like being able to afford my own home. I don't think that's changed much. People still want to be able to become independent. So I was very focused on how do I make that happen. My parents they came to England from the Caribbean when they were children. So my mum was 9, my dad was 15.
Mhm.
Fact that they had somehow bought a home and raised 2 children, it was mind blowing for me. I was like, how have they done that? And I'm 24 and I'm already thinking, I don't know how this is going to happen. So that was really important to me. It was like, hey, if they can do that, I've got to come up another level because they've put so much into me. And career-wise, I was a lawyer working in a city law firm. So the success path looked like get offered a role, which I did, so I joined the commercial department and then work your way up. That's what you do. In 10 years' time, you can be a partner to one, not even 10. 15 years further, you can be a partner too. But when I looked up, I saw 5 women out of 50 partners, mostly unmarried, no kids. And that's not a judgment. It's just, it looked like I got limiting rather than expanding.
Yeah.
And I was immediately unsure whether that was what I wanted as my choice. And it felt at that moment like, well, is that the only way to do that? I'm not sure. So success get very confusing at 24. I had to reimagine what I thought was the path. No, I'm going to have to reimagine this because I actually genuinely don't see that as my future. And that meant at that moment, taking the decision to step away from the city salary and go and work for Sky, which was a relative startup at the time, based out of London, out of central London, out kind of on the outskirts in an industrial site for a relatively small legal team. And in my industry, all could be quite snobbish. So leaving that job and going off and doing something else is you get a few raised eyebrows and curiosity look like, oh, really? Oh, you want to do that? Like you made some wrong choice. It was one of the best choices I ever made in my life. It's led to a different path. So it's a long answer to your question. Success looked very rigid. And at the same time, I felt something. There's a feeling you feel that felt, that's not the path for me. And I'm going to go follow wherever that feeling's leading me. I need to go follow that.
I love that.
So when did you leave law practice the in the city for Sky? What year was that, or how old were you then?
So literally, I qualified 2001. I left 2000. So millennium. And then I left in 2001. I mean, once I've got it in my head, I do kind of make quite quick decisions. So, yeah, I left. I did 9 months working in the city. It was actually 9/11. It's a history lesson for you young people. 9/11 happened, and I was literally had like 2 weeks left in that office. And I remember being in the office. So the world was going through another moment of crazy change.
So Denise, when you tell that story though, about, even at 24, being able to sit back and step back and look at what the rest of your life could look like along that one path, that strikes me as being really mature. Well, mature, maybe that's the wrong word, but having a really big appreciation that you are the master, the curator of your own journey. Where did that come from? Did you have a mentor? How do you think that sort of outlook built for you?
For me, my mentor was my grandmother. She's passed now. She passed in 2021. She's a generation, obviously, before my parents, who had come to England when she was only 17 and got married, left her daughter, who was my mum, who was a baby, in the Caribbean to be raised by her grandmother and mother. And she'd made big, bold decisions in her life and then raised 8 children and was a really strong member of the community. And what she always gave me was a very, very strong sense that I get to do whatever I want. She really believed in me. And I know not everyone has that. So I'm very, very appreciative of what that meant for me. It meant I looked at the world through a lens of, well, I can make that happen and I have support. So I maybe didn't have a trust fund in that sense, or someone going, financially, I can give you all the money, but actually the emotional support and the belief and that safe space of, hey, if it doesn't work out, and I from her and my parents, I always felt it would be fine. I had a place, and that's precious. I can't underestimate how much that's helped me, and that not everyone has that. Which is, again, why I do the work I do now and why I like to be a mentor to others or to coach, because that inside piece, how we think, what we think about ourselves, how we talk to ourselves, plays such a big part in what opens up for us. And I don't think we talk about that enough.
I completely agree. We just filmed an episode actually about parenting, and like from obviously 2 very different perspectives. And but in the episode, I also spoke a lot about how, like, with my parents, I've always felt like, oh, I have a place to come back to, and that I can take those risks and I can be a little bit brave because I've got, my sisters and my parents, and they, they'll always say, like you said, there's a place for you. And I think that that's worth more than anything. And the power, I suppose, of generations and that kind of passing on knowledge. And now the same way your grandmother passed it on to you, you're passing that on to other people who might not have had that privilege growing up, like to have that mentor. I think it's amazing.
It is, and that's the beauty of what you two have put together as well. But when I first heard to create this podcast, I thought genius, because it is, again, something I might take for granted, but not everyone has access to these conversations on a regular level, on a regular basis. You might have it on the odd time, but to be able to dip in and like share thoughts and thinking and perspectives across generations is a really, really important part of our society. So yeah, absolutely.
Oh, thank you.
You get to do this.
So, as you know, we love an intergenerational conversation, and we know that, you're probably having them at home with your stepchildren and your son. How do they play out for you in the workplace?
So in my own work, in my coaching work, I tend to work with women who are closer to my generation. So often in their anywhere from late 30s through to 50s, 60s and beyond. So they're often established in their careers, and either seeking a new path or looking to take themselves to the next level. They're kind of redefining who they are. So I'm mindful that I can easily spend a lot of time in that bubble. And what that can mean is it's really great, but equally you can find yourself only talking in a certain echo chamber to certain people. We have the same. So I am really pleased that within that, space, I also mentor and I have an open door for younger people who will approach me wanting to know how to get into television, how to get into law, and just talking about their careers generally. So I'm always happy to have those conversations. But my TV work is where I get to, in a true working environment, work across generations, and I love it. So when I go out on Escape to the Country, we travel for, a week at a time in our little crew. And that crew will have everyone from the kind of entry level person into the industry who's researcher level, runner level, right.
A lot of my mates. A lot of them are runners.
Sorry,
Yes.
And it goes right out to me. And this is what's happened over 20 years doing this job. Suddenly I've realized, I am the oldest person on the crew. When did that happen?
Yeah, no, that's amazing.
Me and
Like
sound,
today,
when the soundy turns up, so our sound engineer is usually a freelancer who comes up, and that's the only space where I get someone who's a little bit older than me. Our producer directors are generally like a decade at least younger than me, and then it goes down like that. So it's a really interesting dynamic environment to have, these generations, and we literally are spaced out across the generations, and we're all together working on this project for a week, and we staying in the hotel, we travel together, we eat our meals together. So there's a lot of time to see how we embrace the work and to have conversations outside of that about each other's lives, our perspectives, music, politics, family. I love it. It's a real moment of filling my cup.
Yeah, totally. Because the creative world, that's what's amazing is like, I've done weird and varied jobs in the creative world, but what I found is you do meet the most interesting characters, and some can be, 20, 30 years older than you, and then you can go on set and you can meet like an 18-year-old who's just started drama school, and you learn so much from each other. When you look at like a Gen Zer, hello, someone in their early 20s, like those runners on set you were talking about, what do you think is maybe a huge challenge they're facing or a hurdle that they're facing in today's world?
The number one challenge I hear at the moment, and this is very much feels like this is the thing, is what the older generation are calling the cost of living, but that insecurity in having a job, finding a job, having access to money in some sort of sense of security. And I feel for them. It's not that it was, and in some ways I think, was it any more secure? When you look back over generations, there's always a moment of crisis. But I definitely think there's a challenge in wanting to get into industries and finding there's less space and there's just less security. You're not sure how long you're going to have that job.
Yeah. 100.
Yeah. And there's less of I think, a feeling that, but if I just do X, Y, Z, it'll all be okay. And much as I may have rejected that traditional path back in my 20s, the path existed.
yeah,
Yeah. I agree.
And there's a little less of that feeling of, but there is a path. It feels, I think for Gen Z, it's a lot more like shaky ground. Is that going to exist? Is that going to exist? Is this what I want to do? I think the other challenge is a really positive one, and one that that Gen Z and the generation coming behind you, I don't even know what you call them. My son's 13.
Alfred, they're the Alpha.
I get confused with all the names. Anyway,
Don't worry, so do we sometimes.
they're the problem solvers, because what we've had is a wonderful opportunity to look at our mental health and to have more conversations about how we think and have more conversations about how we want to live. I think the law firm that I founded was all about flexible working, remote working, giving people more choice so that they could balance a family life and work at high levels. And I think what the opportunity is, I see the younger generations have seen some of that and go, yeah, that's great. I want that. Of course, I want a life as well as to enjoy my work. And I think the struggle now is the generations above going, oh no, you don't want to do it like that. You have to come into the office and you must work really hard, and being called things like snowflakes and flaky. And I think that's a challenge, like having those labels thrown at you. But opportunity, because you're the ones designing the world coming up. So you could be like, yeah, thank you very much. Anyhow, this creates something awesome.
Love that.
Going back to what you said before, there's so much choice on the one hand compared to what we had. And yet and so that's a positive, isn't it? But on the other hand, it sort of comes with a level of uncertainty. So the ground maybe feels a bit shaky.
Yeah.
That's yeah.
I don't know your generation, I know your generation, your upbringing, Angie, and compared to yours, Annie, but so there was a tradition of like, especially from my community, like you want to get your education, really important, and then get a good job because everyone wants you to get that stability. So become a lawyer or a doctor, go into finance, like Angie did, like go get something, go get that city job. And honestly, there's part of me that hasn't moved away from that, because when I talk about the security, the system is still set up to say, if you get a regular job with a monthly salary, then we'll give you a mortgage, then you're acceptable, and you can get your in. If you want to do something different, you're already a kind of an outcast.
Yeah.
So, but on the other hand, you've got parents like myself I'm raising my son and I really want him to feel that choice. So I'm like, you can do anything you want to, but I'm mindful that what does that do?
So I've got a question then, coming again from, our immigrant communities, there really was that focus, wasn't there, about, your education and then being in a profession. That's, the one, lawyers, doctors, accountants. My my mum and dad weren't so happy I went into banking because that wasn't wasn't secure enough. That's how they felt. But anyway, how would you feel if do you really mean that when you say to your son, you can be anything? Is there a tension? Is there a tension inside?
Tension, yeah, that there is a tension. So I'm still big on the education.
Yeah.
Haven't let that go. But what that means, I hope I've expanded. So be educated in our system so that you understand our system, but not because having been through our system, you are now educated, if that makes sense. There's much more in the world to be aware of. So having most important for me is that he has an appreciation of how to learn, a curiosity for life, and a way of finding out information and critical thinking. So having conversation, confidence.
Yes.
That's the big thing from his education that I want him to have. So this is my youngest one now. So doing things in school where using that platform where he can push himself into uncomfortable situations, learning new skills, like seeing school like that, it's a place to learn, push, get confidence, have a voice. So the best feedback to me is when a teacher says he raises his hand, he asks questions. Yeah, great. I want that skill for you to go with you through life. And then thirdly, just the opportunity to play. So he sings in the choir.
Yeah.
Those elements of life are the bits that we need to keep with us as we go through. Like those are where you get those intergenerational moments, and that is what he experiences at school. In the choir is where he can be or in drama is when he's working alongside sixth formers, and the prep schoolers. What a moment that is! You're not just kept in your one band of year eights. You're like, no, the wider world could all work together. So that's what education looks like. And then in terms of what he does next, look, we've worked hard. And one of the things that hopefully we're able to do is pass on some generational wealth. We have a home. So I'm also conscious that the world is going to look different to my children. I'm not planning on going anywhere come soon. So if they'll be here for another 50, 60 years. But still, that's a different level of security, knowing that hopefully there's a pot there, there's something.
Yeah.
And that being grounded then allows a sort of blossoming into choice, doesn't it? And whether that's, comes from financial stability or security or love security, as you described with grandma, or, generational security as, you know that there's a whole family sitting behind you. That's so important for how we're able to blossom, knowing that. So, and I think, lots of the topics that we've talked about encompass that. And I know, in my work as a yogi, I suppose, that being secure and having that solid foundation, whatever it looks like, is what allows the growth to come. There's a phrase from the martial arts traditions of stand like a mountain, flow like water. But, it's
My favourite,
that
family.
yeah, only the base allows you to do that. And also coming back to, I mean, Annie might not, big herself up, but the work that she does with the acting, teaching, and, the confidence presenting that you do in primary schools, of all types of primary, just watching that is so important.
Oh, no, thanks, Angie. Yeah, I mean, just what you were saying about your son there, I completely resonate with. Like Andrew was saying, I go into schools and work with them on confidence and public speaking. And, one of the boys' schoolers I work at, they have a class with, some of the 12-year-olds, and they work with all the way down to like the 7-year-olds. And actually, the beautiful thing here is I see actually the kind of the preteens, they become more mature and confident by helping the younger kids, and the younger kids gain from it. And I mean, that's only a couple of years, and like, but in school, that's everything. And just like you said with your son, like with the choir, having the arts, having that little bit of extra, I know, sparkle in their day, that's what makes them confident to then go into a classroom and be able to raise their hand. And it's those foundations, going back to the mountain and the water, that will set us up for when we're later down the line in life and we go into our law practice, so on, our job interviews or our uni seminars and things like that. So yeah, I just I completely resonated with everything you said there. And kind of just bouncing off that, would you say that now you're in your adulthood, do you have any close intergenerational friendships, and what do you enjoy and value about them? I know we mentioned your lovely grandmother. Do you have any kind of like, do you have an Angie?
Or Annie.
Or an Annie?
Like going both directions. Like I am very lucky, again, blessed that the family unit I come from is very strong, and it extends beyond my nuclear family. So we are everyone's a cousin and an auntie, whether they're blood related or not. What that means is my son was 13 literally this weekend just gone, and it was important to mark that moment by bringing the generations together. So we had friends come over, and my parents are actually away, but my dad's really good friend, who's also my best friend's father, made the effort to come anyway. Like he is in their 70s. So he came to show his support and be there for this 13-year-old young boy coming up and say, I'm here. And he and I can have a little chat as well, and I can check in with what's going on. And it was great, I'll give him a shout out. Uncle Terry. It's like, what's going on? He's in, he was like, oh, I've got my salsa classes. I'm back into dancing, living his life. So I'm able to have conversations with my parents' friends, and I can sit down and have quite deep conversations with them, which has been something that's been open to me throughout my life. So that's lovely. And within my work and my network from law, I recently realised how many of my contacts are a generation above me. And what I've started to notice is that they're starting to retire. So I've been separating like few of my friends they're retiring or they're stepping down from long-held roles.
Yeah.
They are like the top dog. They have been, the general counsel or the head of HR or the chief technology officer or the CEO. So I've grown with them and seen them in these positions. Many of them were my clients when I had a law firm. But for me, connection and communication is the most important part. So it's always kept a friendship alongside the business. And so now seeing them move into that stage of their life is quite interesting, and meeting up for lunches and having balance when we talk. So that's that side of things. And it's great. Those are my mentors, wisdom sharers from that perspective. The other end, back to family. I have a lot of cousins. I'm the eldest of
Okay.
17. And my brother and I were the first two for a long time. So I was 12 when the next cousin came along.
Yeah.
So now they're all in their 30s and 20s. But again, we're very close. So I like to spend time with them. And one of the relationships that has really shifted for me is my niece, who is going to be 21, Jill. So she's been studying in Manchester, and it just so happens as she took her place in Manchester, I started working on Morning Live, which is films in Manchester. And that's meant regularly I've been up there and we meet for breakfast or brunch or a little lunch, or if I'm overnight for dinner. I've been able to go and see her digs, meet her friends, and that time when it's just one-on-one and us having a conversation is extremely precious to me, to get to know her as she's getting to know who she is and who she wants to be in the world. And I think one reflection I have from talking to women in their 20s is how much they have to say and how much they have to be listened to. So in those conversations, I find myself doing a lot of listening, but really gratefully, like, I want to hear it. I want to hear what's happening with your friends, boyfriends, not boyfriends, girlfriends, whatever's going on. And I want to hear about your studies. I want to hear about the big ideas that are starting to land with you and how you think about. I love it, but it is so much. They want to talk and they want to be heard. And I get it.
Yeah, we do. I love that, Denise. Yeah. I want to be like that with my niece. Like, yes, I love that. Yeah, we want to be, want to be heard. End of.
And want to be heard at the same level. So it's interesting, I think what you described there is something that's gone from Auntie Denise to actually friendship. And it's slightly different, isn't it? Or, and even if you look back at our traditional family structures that they would have been, that hierarchical thing of you being auntie and being, successful and all of that and giving advice, it's sort of, things marry up and sort of balance out a little bit, don't they?
I think the thing for me to learn now and practice is that same openness and vulnerability. As you say that, Angie, I think there is some legacy of, but you're auntie and you're a caretaker. And so there's a lot of listening, but meeting that generation with more transparency, honesty about our own lives and our own struggles, I think could be really helpful.
One thing that I'd say about Annie and I's relationship is that it is literally that. And it's really precious. I haven't had that with a young person before. I've got my boys and all their friends and everyone else. But, Annie and I, we talk to each other as equals. And, and that might sound to some people listening that oh, well, why wouldn't you be? Yeah. But, they're I've talked about it a lot. My background is all about that hierarchy and, looking up to the person that's older and wiser and taking their advice and blah, blah, blah. But it's been so refreshing to be able just to be me with someone completely different and of a different age. And I've genuinely learned so much about myself and also about Annie's generation. And it's a real blessing. It's been, it's remarkable. So let it all out, Denise.
Let it all out.
I think it's a bit different if it's someone in your family, though, because that's
agree. Yeah, I think that's why I was saying there's a bit of work there, and it's a conscious thing to just think about. It can be done, but to notice our own conditioning, our own thoughts about that hierarchy and what we're supposed to be and how we're supposed to show up, and being more trusting of our younger generation, that they can handle the truth.
They can handle the truth. And actually,
the mess up on the bill.
You can't handle the truth.
I can handle it. it's us. We need to be able to, us oldies need to be able to handle the truth. I think that's the question. Because sometimes we can't handle it, right?
Yeah, and I think that brings me back to that mental health point. A lot of what we were brought up with is just stay strong, keep it all together. There is no space to, I hate this word, but to be weak or to show vulnerability because, and it's genuine. Like we genuinely might not have a job, and we genuinely might be stepping on the toe of a generation that didn't understand that. So there wasn't necessarily that space to do that. We're bringing up a new generation who understand that more, which is great. And now we're trying to meet them.
Yeah.
And that's, which is a bit of a seesaw of everyone kind of adjusting.
It often feels to me that, in those old days, there was that, the hierarchical was like one layer on top of the other, right? Like bricks. And, you had to wait until your brick moved up to the next level. Whereas this way of living where we are now, if we're going to let it work, it's more like everyone's in a bubbly. Mike might have to do some editing here. Hang on, Mike. Let me think about what I'm saying. Is that in this model today, actually, we're all sitting alongside each other, but in sort of squidgy bubbles. And there needs to be space and fluidity between the different generations, and everyone sort of moves around. So it's about being able to feel happy in space without that
Yeah.
structure, but also to be able to, what you just said there, to be able to give space. When you were saying about the listening, you have to be able to create the space for the other generations too, right?
Yeah.
And
I know I'm the one being interviewed, but I am curious, Annie, since I've got what it is like for you. Like, do you look genuinely like at sitting here with me and Angie and think, oh yeah, I've got two like older aunties in the room?
I think it's, you know what, if I'm being completely candid, like honestly, I do still get like I think before this I was a bit nervous. I was like, oh my goodness, like this is something I've, not really done before. I've never interviewed someone on a podcast. I'm usually there just like, rattling off about my Downton Abbey episodes, and all that. And like which is not more than that. But yeah, no, I was a bit nervous. But then it's like as the interview goes on, you realize that we are just all, human beings. And the main difference is some of us have a little bit more life experience than others, and that's okay. I think the mindset which helps me is that I genuinely try to look at people who are older than me with more life experience who are super impressive, as it's a complete like gift to be able to talk to them. Like I remember, to quote Taylor Swift, but she once said that, if you're the most impressive person in the room, that you're in the wrong room. Always surround yourself with people who are more impressive than you. And so, hearing your story, working with Angie, I just consider it as an ability, as a way to take information, learn from people, and level up. So yeah, I do still get a bit nervous, but not in like a, oh my gosh, like I can't talk to them way. More just like I think maybe a little bit of an excited, hope I don't look like an idiot because I really want to learn some stuff and really want to, meet interesting people way.
So please share then on that level. I feel a little bit the same, Annie.
really, I wanted to ask you,
You believe the I genuinely mean it. And like, look at this accomplished young woman. She's accomplished in case what she's doing. She's going into school teaching.
Oh, thanks.
They've got sponsorship, owning the room.
Oh, thanks.
This is really great. And we're having this conversation, and she's interested in what I have to say. And even I have things to share, but you are a human, and we still think, oh, am I going to be interesting enough? Is this 20? Well,
Topics and the connections that you have. There's a phrase that's been trending on the internet at the moment. I don't know whether you guys have seen it. It's about like about gatekeeping. Have you guys heard this? They're like, oh, don't gatekeep, like share information and I feel like with this podcast we've been able to stop the gatekeeping. We've all been able to share that information, share our life experience from either end. Whether you are 24 or whether you're 49 or 53, we've been able to share that. What do you think then? Like as kind of like this is like a quite a broad question. What do you think becomes possible when generations stay curious about each other rather than just, staying in their little... We've kind of covered this, I suppose, but if you had to sum it up, rather than staying in their own
I'd
lanes.
say what becomes possible is wisdom from both ends. We need the naivety of youth, and I say that in a very positive and generous way.
Yeah.
I loved the naivety of my youth. Like, I want to keep some of that. Why isn't that possible? Why is it done that way? That constant questioning, and not just going, oh, because it is. I've been around for 5 decades now. Let me tell you something about the world. This is how it works. No, you need that freshness and that questioning that says, but why? But why? But why? What about? And even if someone else says to you, oh, but we've done that before. Oh, don't worry, we've seen it all before. I think it's really important to have that mix.
Yeah.
I think if we don't, the danger is, just like in a workplace, you end up in silos and you wonder why you're not making progress, because no one is working together. Everyone's working, pulling their own rope in their own direction, instead of bringing their forces together. And nature is our best teacher. It teaches us things have to interconnect. They have to have an ecosystem. Everything relies on each other. So it's when we stay curious and stay connected, we are stronger. It's just like a scientific fact. It's unquestionable. Let's just get on with doing that and not allow. I think the thing we have to be mindful of now is, while technology is an amazing platform, it can also be a platform which separates us rather than connects us if you only stay in your own echo chamber on these platforms, only talk to people who have the same thoughts and things as you. So there's a lot of support in that. And we have to kind of use our tools, our critical thinking tools, to extend ourselves, to go outside our box, to see what else is happening. And that being and mixing intergenerationally can help with that. You have to go do it on your own. You just go talk to someone else. They'll say, like you just said, oh, have you, I hadn't heard I haven't seen those, because that's not what's coming into my feed. I've heard the term and we use it. We've talked about gatekeepers for a long time in our own way, in the female empowerment community, in the racial equality community. We're very aware that there are gatekeepers at certain places that keep people out and keep information. It's very interesting to me to hear, oh, that's coming out as a topic for young people. And yeah, unless I had this conversation, I wouldn't know that that's what you're seeing. Now I'm going to go look it up. Go see you. I'll see it.
Thanks, Denise.
So one of the questions, or one of the things that always comes up for me when I meet Annie, and you're right, she's amazing, we've said before, is that I have a little bit of, not enviousness, but you look back and you think, gosh, I always think, if I'd been like Annie when I was 24, I'd be ruling the world by now. But when you look back, or you look at Gen Z and their openness and their flexibility, is there anything that you feel that you wish you'd had, or that you'd like more of now?
Oh, it's a great question. I can't answer that question without firstly saying that I didn't know you when you were 24, but I'm pretty sure you were like Annie when you were 24.
I can never get behind that.
Please correct that one.
I agree.
The woman who's had the career trajectory in life that you have and the things you've created is a woman who at 24 was already on a very strong path. So I need to just say that.
I agree.
So when I look at the generation now, I'm not envious in that way. I don't wish to be you. I am. Okay, this is what I am. I'm optimistic, but I'm also like really willing you all to just go for it even more.
Oh, yeah.
Do you know? So I
Yeah.
think the thing I think I did know, but I wish I would push it even more on myself in my 20s, is even more of the, no, Denise, you really can do what you want. Like it really is possible. And there's so much, I don't like, there is so much messaging that tries to take that away. This constant bombardment we've got at the moment about the awful things that are happening to women, that awful ways that we're being treated by men in power. It's subtly and subliminally is just constantly a drip feed,
Yep.
which can have
Yep.
an effect on your own self-esteem, your own thoughts about how far can I go before I'm
Yes.
stopped. So that is the thing, to go, actually, there's a whole lot of women that want to support you and want you to do really well. And for all of that noise, I'd love to amplify the other voices so that when you're going, I want to be an actress, not I want to be, I am an actress. I don't know what your ambitions are, Annie, but I hope they're the highest of the highest of the highest for you. I hope that you're not going, yes, but. I want that, but, realistically, this is what's really available to me. Just would love you all to just go, no, no, no. And, youth is on my side at the moment as well. So let's go for it.
Yeah.
Go for it. If, that's it. If I could go back, I'd just do even more.
Do even more. What great advice. Great advice. Denise, I've got a question. Is there anything, so in your amazing trajectory, and you've stepped off the path that you were on, you've stepped back on it, you've taken different doors, and, Annie often mentions that film Sliding Doors, where, those sliding door moments. Is there anything you regret? Anything that you didn't do that you wish you had done?
Oh, I've got a couple of big ones. Because I don't believe in regrets in that sense. But I'm living the life I'm meant to live, and I truly do believe that. And with new information, maybe I'd have made different choices. So here's my biggest one. I used to want a really big family because my grandmother had 8 children. And at the same time, I thought, how on earth does she live a life where she was pregnant 8 times and had that happen to her body? And I just couldn't get my head.
Yeah.
What I think I believe now is that if that is a choice for you, that now I see how time moves, actually it's not that bad. And if that is something you wanted to do, I think we are put off doing it because we think I won't have the career I want. I need to have the career first. That certainly was my experience. I need to have got my career. I need to have got everything together, and actually, if I was, I would have maybe wanted. I would have started sooner. I've enjoyed my life. I traveled. I did all sorts of things before I had my son, but I think that fear. It annoys me that there was a fear about what I thought my choices would be and what would be available to me. And so that is something that I'd want women to have the choice, more freedom to go, yeah, I want to start a family and I still want to have my own great career. And this is how and to be able to feel that it can both can happen. And I feel that choice isn't always there. So that's my big one. The other one is property and investments.
Yeah.
So going back now, I would say invest.
Yeah.
Learn about investing in stock and portfolios and those sorts of things that we don't get talked to about enough.
Yes.
When you've got that first job, it's often, save a bit for a rainy day. Like, no, invest it.
Yes.
And I had some mentors say those sorts of things to me. So I'd have done more of that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's great advice.
Yeah, on that, there's I heard an interview with a really interesting young accountant who's set up a investing firm for young women. So actually, we need to go and find out who she is, Annie, because she might be great.
Yeah, she'd be great, wouldn't she?
And something comes up for me there about, the sense that sometimes we often think as we go through life that the circumstances have to be right. Like there has to be a right time, right? To buy a house, to invest, to start your pension, to have children. And actually, what you've just said there is the waiting for the right time didn't actually serve in the end, right?
No, I think it was it was my life, and it's the story, and I happy with that. But yeah, going back now, or if I was telling my younger self, I would say, "Oh, you can do this. This is the information you need that you didn't have." Um, and those two things actually go hand in hand, like your choices and your financial freedom. Yep.
Yes.
That's why it's really important to me that we kind of figure this out, our financial freedom. And it doesn't necessarily always look like I just got the good job. In fact, yes,
Yes.
not like that, because that sets you on a path where you've been set up to spend all the money you earn,
Yes.
be released. Whereas if you actually taught about investing and compounding that money, and maybe even you might be staying at home a bit longer, but maybe you invested in a property that you're renting out or something.
Yeah.
There are so many other ways that if we all talk to each other
Yes.
and get creative, even buying properties together with a couple of your friends, these are things that are possible. And then that make that choice about how I want to live my life and where I want to start a family, whether I want to adopt or foster or not have children at all and travel the world, whatever it is, you can make those choices quicker than you think, I think, if you
Yeah.
start thinking outside the traditional box of what we've been told is possible.
Literally, I think that's everything you just said there is kind of a conversation I've been having, particularly a lot with my female friends, where they go, "Oh, I'm on this corporate ladder now," or all my artistic, creative friends, and they go, "Oh, but I'm not on this corporate ladder. Am I going to be financially stable?" And it seems like whatever side of the fence they're on, they feel trapped. And, I've had so many friends actually turn around and go, "Yeah, I'd want to have a family, but maybe it's just actually no." Like they always feel like they have to make that choice. And it's crazy that in 2026, we still feel a bit bound by that. I don't know about you guys, but when I was in school, we were always advised, don't talk about politics, religion, or money. And now I'm like, no, I think we should really, particularly, especially actually with our friends, it's okay to talk about money and in the acting community, financial transparency is actually quite big to make sure you're not being.
Have to make sure that you all know what's going on. Yeah.
Yeah. But I think as, women in our 20s, when we're at that kind of those pivotal moments and we're figuring life out and we're figuring what paths we want to take, to be able to talk about money, finances, investing, and regardless of whether you're working a really corporate job or a creative job, is so important to, like you said, give us that freedom and that flexibility and those choices. Yeah, I completely agree. Completely.
Women talking about it is really important.
Yeah.
Really is. And so sometimes the messages are just sent out there blandly, but women having conversations about politics, important.
Yes.
Women having conversations about finance, extremely
Important.
Yeah.
Yes.
As with blanket, we don't need to. No, maybe some of you don't need to talk about it anymore. You've overplayed yourself. But we need to. We need to
100%.
figure out what we actually think, and we do that in conversation.
So I think a lot of that brings together a lot of what we've spoken about today. This need for curiosity about others around us, the world around us, about connectedness and having these conversations. And in terms of the gatekeeping, not having that gatekeeping, whether it's about money or careers or family or whatever. And I think Annie's point before about not being the smartest person in the room,
Ah,
if
yes.
you're interested in money, go and find the friend that you've got who always seems to have cash or always seems to be investing. Go find out what they're doing. And that's one of the things I regret, I think, not doing is, go and if there's something that you feel is a gap, right, in your knowledge, there's someone in your network, they might be your friend or your grandma or whoever who does know. And it's only through us having these conversations that we realize. And Annie's point about not being scared about being not the smartest person in the room actually is really, really powerful.
It's so powerful. And it's a great point. And there's that was something that I used as a lawyer when you first qualified as a solicitor and you're working in these big firms, you get taken into meetings and you're suddenly the solicitor. You're qualified, and that brings with it a sort of weight and a responsibility. And you realize you may be younger, but equally people are coming to you because you have that title.
Yeah.
It's an expectation about what you know, and so that can weigh really heavy. And so one of the best skills I was taught was to exactly what you said, Annie, to like being the smartest person in the room can look like being the one who's willing to say, I don't know everything and I need to ask more questions. And where a lot of lawyers get into trouble is we don't ask enough questions. It's like the basics. And it's where I got into the most trouble in my career early on, because I did the whole, oh, you're more senior than me. You've got much more experience. So what you're saying has a lot more weight and must be more true. And I didn't ask enough questions, and I took someone's word and went and drafted something on that basis rather than kind of going and doing my own investigation. Great learning moment. But what it means is when I go into a meeting, being the person who says, I didn't understand that, or this is how I understood that. Have I got that right? Could you break that down? Or can we go through that a bit more slowly? And as a woman, again, you got to put up with sometimes people giving you that look of, "Oh, yes, we all get it." They don't all get it. I've sat in enough rooms now to know they do not all get it. They all pretend they do until you ask the killer question.
Yeah.
My number doesn't seem to add up with that number. Can someone explain it to me? And then there's a lot of blank faces. Oh, so we do have an issue here. Maybe we need to go and investigate that before we take this further. Our wisdom isn't tied to our age.
No.
Because our true wisdom is our ability to be curious, ask questions, and then to critically think. And it's when we think we know it all that we really get ourselves into some hot water, into some trouble.
Mic drop. Literally that. I think that's a great point to ask our round off question. What do you think, Angie?
I think it's perfect. So, Denise, we have every week or every episode too young for this, too old for that moment. So is there a moment in the last couple of weeks where you felt either too young for something or too old for something?
Most recently, I had my 30-year university reunion. There's a bunch of friends. We went back up to Liverpool where we all studied, lots of them medics now, lawyers, linguists, all sorts of things. And we'd booked the weekend and we were going to go on this tour of all the places and clubs and bars that we used to go to.
Yeah.
And then we booked dinner and we got to the restaurant and it was lovely and lively. And they put up this lovely big table for us on a platform, which was right near the front of the restaurant, and someone was performing. And we all took one look at the table, looked at each other and went, can we have that table right at the back in the corner? Because we just want to talk to each other and have a chat and be able to hear each other. And then lots of my friends, I was like shocked. They all got their glasses out and started getting their phones out with the lights on to sit. Oh, literally, I'm too old to sit near the front, but I'm too young to not be able to see the menu. What's happening?
Brilliant. Brilliant.
Annie, you can look forward to that because it happens all the time.
The phone torch. Excellent.
I think the magnifying app is the when things are going downhill.
Think of things I did not want to know about. How have I got to the stage of life where I'm learning these tricks?
That's brilliant. Thank you, Denise.
Annie, do you have one?
Me this week. I try not to make it about teaching. I really do. But I have to admit, I did teach some 4-year-olds Wicked this week at a theatre camp, which was great fun until one of them turned around and went, so when I was born in 2020, and I went, oh. What do you mean? And you're a fully functioning human being. That's probably mine that I felt weirdly too old for this week, even though the kids were adorable. Angie?
I went to an art exhibition with some of my friends, and one of them pulled out a card and got the OAP rate. And I've known her for a really long time. And she is, if you ever meet her, she doesn't look her age at all. And it's always a shock that she's the age she is. But it was just like, oh yes, we have a range of ages in our group. It was very funny. There were some young people behind us. And all my friends were just looking in their pockets for their cards.
Brilliant.
But yeah, I'm good. What you said, Annie, just reminded me. Like I said, my son turned 13. So we had a moment, literally last night, he started singing. There was a TV show when he was a kid called Topsy and Tim, I think, something like that.
Oh, yeah.
Twins. He started singing the theme tune, and he was singing it and humming it, and then I started singing it. I was like, oh, I remember that. He used to watch that, and he said, yes, I was looking at this retro thing about the programs, the kids shows you watched when you were like young, because he's 13 now, so that's years for him. These thinking that's retro. I was
Retro.
outrageous.
It's so nostalgic. So nostalgic and retro.
He uses words like this. Like, what are you talking about? You're 13. Stop it.
I rate that so much.
And actually, that links in really well with our next short episodes that will be coming out soon, where Annie and I argue a little bit about how her generation are stealing all our cool stuff, Denise.
Yeah, that is true.
Like music, films, everything.
But to be fair, I was born in the 76, so grew up in the 80s, 90s, and I've always loved the 70s. I used to wish I was around to be able to go to Studio 54, because that seemed so cool to me at that time. I did think that. So
I feel seen. See, we're obsessed with the 90s. See, it's a whole cycle there. Thank you, Denise.
It was cool. I can't deny it.
Thank you. Oh, I don't think my kids are going to do TikTok dances from 2026. I don't think that's going to age as well.
They are. They're going to be coming back with Skibbity and 6-7 or whatever's going on. Thing wanders up to you.
Don't even start me on 6-7. I can't bear it. I hear it too much at work. Right. Well, Denise, thank you so much for coming on to the podcast. It's an honor to have you as our first guest. Thank you.
I'm delighted. I didn't even realise I'd be the first. So I'm so honoured that I got to be the first. I've loved spending this time with you. Keep going. Keep doing more of it. And I can't wait to hear all the other episodes.
Thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you here. And I think we can agree that joy, laughter, connectedness and curiosity are something that we've really enjoyed today. And also, just a reminder, I know a lot of our listeners are women. I know they're not all, but this idea of that women can have different chapters in your life. You mentioned it right at the beginning. It doesn't matter how old or how young you are. We're really adaptable, and the doors open and it's just a new chapter. So I'm going to really think about that today. So it's been a delight to have you with us. Quick shout out and thank you to Wilfried's, our sponsors, for sponsoring this episode as well. And we can't wait to connect with you soon.
Please be sure to follow us on tooyoung.tooold.com and make sure you're following us on Instagram at tooyoungtoold. And please also give Denise a lovely follow.
And if you want to get in touch with Denise, we're going to share all her socials at the bottom of this episode. So make sure that you follow her too, because she's got awesome advice, whatever generation you are.